Formula One rounded up the season just a few weeks ago, and of course that meant it was the last race of the 2010s. I mean, it's been a pretty good decade, I must admit. We've had some brilliant races, some really good seasons, some close championship battles, and probably seen some of the best drivers that we've seen at all since Formula One first came into the fold in 1950. But I don't know about you guys, but I think, in my opinion, the best thing to come out of Formula One, it has to be surely the F1 debate show. I mean, I can't think of anything else that. I mean, we've had Hamilton, yeah, all right, and Sebastian Vettel. We had that amazing battle, the title battle in 2012, the amazing Grand Prix we've had, 2011 Canada, 2019 Germany. I mean, brilliant. But the F1 debate show, it's on another level. It really, really is. I've got to admit, it was just, yeah, it's just an incredible addition to the world of Formula. I'm only kidding, of course, guys. It's rubbish. It's just useless. No, it's nice. I do like it. But before we start dwelling into things, because today, as you probably gathered, we're going to be having a chilled, sit back, relaxed kind of episode and just talk about our best moments of the decade between F1 in 2010 and 2019, picking out our best highlights, best drivers, best races that we've enjoyed, races that we attended, of course. Maybe go back to the beginning of the F1 debate show again. I know, blah blah blah.
If you have
But
to.
yeah, it's just going to be like a nice chill one. But I want to start off with some decade stats. Now, I've pinched these, I must admit. Okay, I'll hold my hands up. I've pinched them. Okay, but I will shout out the guy who I pinched them from. Lights Out blog does some really, really good race stats and stuff like that. And he posted some stats of the decade. Now, of course, it was like, this is a last minute thing for me to kind of say. I wasn't going to do any stats, but I thought I may as well. So what I'll do instead, then, I'll leave a link to his Twitter in the description below, and a link to the blog that I got these from, so you can have a read of other decade stats that he's put in there as well, because this isn't all the stats that he's put in, a ton more. So go and check it out as well, and obviously I'll give him a shout out as well, because these aren't our stats, these are his. So in terms of racing laps, we've had a total of 11,300 racing laps. We've had 8,152 pit stops. 198 races have contested between F1 2010 and 2019. We've had 66 different drivers. We've gone to 27 different circuits, 25 countries, 22 lap leaders, 12 race winners, 14 pole sitters, a few records broken there, of course, 25 podium finishers, and 48 point scorers. So there's some little decade stats for you guys. Like I said, they are from Lights Out blog. He didn't provide us with them, I just nicked them. But of course, you can go and check out, read his blog in the description below. Link will be there. So yeah, like I said, I have loved F1 in this decade. Well, in fact, it's the only decade I've properly watched F1. Came into the sport about 2010, 2011. That was like my first kind of peak year, 2011. That's when I probably got into the sport properly. And since then, my passion is just, growing and growing and growing and growing to the point of where I do, and me and my mate Lyle, of course, do videos on YouTube about it. That's how the high the passion has got. And of course, during that duration, we've had some amazing seasons, amazing years in Formula One. So, Lyle, I'm going to ask you this, kind of like the first question of the episode, if you like. What's been your favourite season in Formula One? We've had some crackers, let's not forget. Some boring ones, but some really good ones. I think I know which one you're going to say, but you might
Yeah.
shock us anyway. I really don't know. But let's see. What's been your favourite season this decade?
Well, the thing is, I mean, you probably know why I'm going to say this year. And before I do, of course it is, for sure the best year that we've had this decade. And what I've actually said might be the best year of Formula One. I say that because how I work is I like to think that what I'm seeing right now is kind of the best. Like, for example, we all talk about, like all the drivers in the 70s and the 80s being the best, but I like to say, well, I never saw them drive, like in the flesh. I don't know what they're doing right now. So I'd like to think that the drivers I'm seeing, or not too long ago, are still the best. Anyway, so this year, of course, one of the best years, and definitely the best year of the decade. But it's not just for the Formula One on-track action, because at the end of the day, I can just sit there and say, well, I've got the season review of this year. I can watch the races again and things like that. It's the best year because this year, so for example, like with Jordan, obviously we went to 2010 British Grand Prix, which we'll get onto in a bit. I watched 2011, but not religiously. This year was 2012, if you didn't know, was the first year when I watched the entirety of Formula One, like I took it proper seriously. So Australian Grand Prix 2012, I feel like it was Mother's Day, just randomly.
Yes, it was. Yeah.
And I watched practice sessions, I watched qualifying live about 3 a.m. and then I also got up for the race. Got up, 4:30, 5 o'clock. Watched the race, the entirety of the race, and then again I did that for the same for Malaysia, China, all of the races that year. And I remember even that there was a 3 on the bounce race, which was Japan, South Korea, and India, and they were all, I think there might have been like 2 week gap or something like that, and then again all 3 just early morning starts, early morning, didn't mind getting up for them. And yeah, I loved that year because not just for the on-track action, Jordan, but just for kind of me getting into the sport. I took it seriously. I was reading the stats. To be honest, kind of the primary version of this, really, like reading the stats, watching YouTube videos, taking Formula One proper seriously. Obviously, when I went to Silverstone in 2010, I chose Red Bull as my team. Of course, Mark Webber, the first driver that I saw won because he won the British Grand Prix. So I was like, right, that's my driver. Obviously, I stuck with the team Red Bull. So my team, of course, Red Bull, were excelling. They'd just won in 2010, of course. I remember watching the 2010 Abu Dhabi Grand Prix. That was absolutely amazing. 2011, I mean, yeah, it was good. Sebastian was dominating, Red Bull were dominating, and again, that was great for me. But I'm not going to say that I watched that year religiously because I didn't. Just a few races on and off, kind of thinking, right, well, I have been to an event, but like, I don't know, what have I been to that I might not like? I don't know, I can't think of anything. Like, you might go to like a tennis match or something. You might think, oh, well, I'll be a tennis fan for that game, but I'm like, I'm not really a tennis fan. So I was like kind of treading the water kind of thing, seeing if I liked it in 2011. Tried again for 2012, and then of course that's when I was proper hooked. I mean, 2012 as well was an absolutely incredible year for me, and a lot of things was amazing. And we had some incredible movies, we had some great music. For me, it was like the best year for like me and my friends going out and playing football and stuff. I love 20 also as well. Obviously, me and Jordan were still at school. School was proper lit at that point. It was just so good. Obviously, not for the work, but I guess that was okay. Back then. It was just 2012 was absolutely incredible, Jordan, and of course. Then the races were great. So your boys, McLaren, both wins. Fernando Alonso win. Even Pastor Maldonado wins. My guy Mark Webber wins. Of course, Sebastian Vettel wins. In the first 7 races, we have 7 different winners, which includes Pastor. And actually, just quickly, Jordan, the Spanish Grand Prix, I remember that because I don't remember the date, even though I have a feeling it was the 14th of May. I have to look
It was
up.
it was the 13th of May. I remember that. I remember that day so well.
The reason I remember that day is because we have some friends who are Sunderland fans. So it was Sunderland Manchester United the game. So they had free tickets. We went, and I remember we were driving over. We heard the build up in the car on the radio. So watched the race start at their house. Then we went off to the game, and again, kind of going off tangent for football. That was the day that the game. I think it was 1-0 United beat Sunderland. I was kind of rooting for United now, wasn't really. I was there as a spectator. And then also on the other side, of course, this was the last day of the Premier League. Man City were playing QPR. It was 2-2, 90 plus 4, and Aguero puts it in the back of the net. And of course, 3-2.
Crazy day.
And then, of course, back then, all the way up north in the Stadium of Light, all the Sunderland fans heard about that. Were going mental at the Man U fans, not Man U fans, sorry, Man U players like Wayne Rooney, I was going to say Lord Sugar there, Sir Alex Ferguson.
What?
They were all celebrating. He was like, no, go away, City won the league. So that was quite good. And then on the way back in the car, and we got back home, and of course turned on the TV. Pastor Maldonado wins, first Venezuelan to win, first Williams win in 8 years, and of course about 10 minutes later, that was the unfortunate where Williams had the pit lane fire.
I remember that
in the garage. That's right. So that was a really great day. I was one day off, Jordan. I was really annoyed that I thought I got it right. Yes, but that was an incredible day. I really remember that. Again, Monaco. Remember that had a cycling boot camp the next day. Just unbelievable year throughout. And of course, we had some great battles there. Sebastian Vettel gets it at the very last minute. But it leads on to, Jordan, what we all want to see as a Formula One fan, which of course is a last-minute showdown, a battle in Abu Dhabi or a battle in Brazil, a battle in the last race of the season, which we've had a few times in this decade, but of course sometimes it hasn't. Of course, like this year, it ended way beforehand, when that's not very good, because then you head into the other races and you're like, what's the point? But no, of course, 2012, Jordan, my favourite year. Absolutely loved that. I mean, I can name things like that. Also, as well, actually, just quickly, one last thing. I mean, I can talk about 2012 for ages. Honestly, I can. But I remember the day after the Spanish Grand Prix, so my life changed at the Spanish Grand Prix almost. I remember I went into school, right, and one of the guys I was sitting next to in English, he says to us, "Oh yeah, I saw Pastor Maldonado won." Oh no, he didn't. He said, "Oh, I saw this like South American guy won." I was like, "Oh yeah, Pastor Maldonado from Venezuela," and he started laughing. And I was like, "What are you laughing at?" And he was like, "Oh, don't you think it's funny that the South American won, Venezuelan won? Of course, the Venezuelan national anthem should have played, but instead they played the British national anthem." I thought, no, that's not right. They'd play the Venezuelan national anthem for Pastor Maldonado. And then that's when I realised that they did play the British national anthem afterwards. And that's when I realised that they play both the drivers and the constructors' national anthems. So again, I learned something new that day. Oh god, 2012 was great. Spanish Grand Prix was great. Yes, definitely my best year, Jordan. So, of course, what is your favourite year? I've got a feeling what you're going to say as well. And also why, if you're going to say that year, why? Give us an explanation of why this is your best year.
Well, I'm just going to agree with you on that one, Lyle. 2012 was a truly amazing year. Like you said, like the title went down to the wire between Vettel and Alonso. It was just a great year overall. Now, yeah, I'm pretty much just going to agree with what you just said there. Pretty much just kind of like a copy and paste type of thing. Like, yeah, 2012 was just a brilliant year. I remember the Spanish Grand Prix, so well. I remember the British Grand Prix as well. I remember that very, very well. And I even remember the Brazilian Grand Prix because I remember being, I watched the start at me dad's, and I was getting picked up to go home, and at that moment was when Vettel spun. So
Yeah,
I remember saying
yes.
like, "Step on it! I need to go. We need to go quick, like pronto." So I was like, "Oh my, like, this is madness!" This, and weirdly enough, my dad's not an F1 fan, but he watched the start with us, and I was explaining to him what the scenario was, and then he randomly said, "Oh, someone's going to take him out on purpose." Well, of course they're going to do that. And actually he spun. And my dad went, "Told you." I went, "No, but no, man, you don't understand." Of course, Bruno Senna hit Vettel, so of course that wasn't, Bruno Senna would have done that purposely because he was in the title fight. But anyways, but no, like 2012 was a brilliant year. But there were some other years I remember as well, like quite, I remember 2015 as well. That was a bit of a boring year. 2016 was another year that it was like 2012 esque, but not as exciting, if you know what I mean, because 2016 was a Mercedes dominant year. All right, the title went all the way to the wire, and of course the F1 debate show. That's when we first started this, and there's just little moments I remember. Like I remember the first. In fact, actually, randomly enough, right? This just popped in my head. I remember the start of the 2015 Australian Grand Prix. Now I remember it because it was Danny Kvyat's first. It was his obviously first race of the season. It was his first year with, of course, Red Bull, and he failed to start the race or he didn't make it to the start because he broke down or he stalled or whatever just before his grid slot, or he stalled on his grid slot. And at this time, I think I slept in. I had my alarm, and I think I slept in for that race, and I was like, "Oh my god, I need to quickly quickly get the channel up and everything like that." And if Danny Kvyat hadn't have stalled, I would have missed that race. I would have missed the start. So that was like a phew. I've got a lot. I keep forgetting this. I've got a lot to thank for Danny Kvyat, or otherwise I would have missed. I think I haven't missed an Australian Grand Prix in a long time. So yeah, that run keeps on going. So thank you very much for Danny Kvyat. Random tangent, but no, 2012 was like I said, solid year. 2016 as well was another good year. Like the 2016 Spanish Grand Prix. Apart from me going absolutely ballistic over Verstappen winning, and obviously you've seen that me video like your little Dutch beauty and stuff like that. Of course, the two Mercedes taking each other out. That was a big one of those like kind of big moments as well that you think that you're seeing on screen and you're like, oh my god, like that was just one of my god. Jaw dropping moments where you're like, did that actually happen? It was crazy as well. And also as well, I remember this, the 2012 Belgian Grand Prix when that started out. I remember just quickly having to I had to go to the football that day. The Newcastle match was on, and I had a season ticket at the time. So I said, I'll watch the first two laps, then I'll quickly go to the match. And I seen what had happened, and I was like, oh no, I need to see what happened. So at the match, I wasn't bothered about the match. I was just like, I need to know what happened for the rest of the race and stuff, because that was just carnage. Yeah. And of course, found out Button won that was his first and only race that he took pole position for McLaren, I believe. And of course, a stunning race win, probably one of Jensen's best drives in a McLaren
Yeah.
The 2012
That was
Belgian Grand
last win
Prix.
as well.
Certainly a underrated driver.
Yeah.
Certainly, but no, I think there has been like a really good handful of seasons. Even 2019, I thought was a good year for Formula One. It didn't start off in the best ways, but even it ended in a really good competitive era. And of course, the F1 debater doing really really well, which I can't thank you enough for. That also helps things as well. And even in 2017. 2017 is another year I just want to quickly highlight because, of course, we got a video out every single week from February till December. Or might be actually end of November because I think December we had a little bit like problems with the Christmas episodes and stuff. But even so, it was a good solid year for us then. And of course, 17, a lot had happened in that season. Vettel doing some blinding driving, I must say, and that's another thing as well. Sebastian Vettel, of course, gets criticised a lot, but I think Sebastian Vettel in 2017, that was probably one of his best seasons.
Yeah.
All right, he didn't win the title, but in terms of driving, I thought he was pretty solid. And when people now people are talking about best, best drives of the decade, best team, and everything like that. And of course, people are saying best overtakes. A lot of people are saying like Mark Webber's overtake on Alonso in Eau Rouge in 2011. That's like one of the best overtakes of the decade. I think someone mentioned Vettel's overtake on Rosberg in Australia 2012 on lap 3 or 4, I think. But for me, easily this. Agree with me or not on this one. But if I had to pick an overtake of the decade while I'm on the topic, Vettel's overtake on Hamilton in Spain 2017, where the one where he goes left I think it goes right, left, then right again in the braking zone, and he overtakes him. It is like I briefly forgot about the overtake, but I mean that was just a brilliant piece of racing from Sebastian Vettel. And certainly one of the highlights. Well, like I said, I think for me that is overtake of the decade, surely, because that was just so hard to do and incredible to do. And it took a genius like Vettel to even attempt it. Of course, the season didn't end the way he wanted to. But Lyle, Sebastian Vettel, he's been he was so dominant this one half of the decade, wasn't it? Between let's say 2010 and 2013, that was like the Vettel kind of era. And when I think of Sebastian Vettel, I kind of go on this this reminiscent tangent of school days and hanging out with your mates and stuff, like a bit like what you said before about 2012. You always think of Sebastian Vettel as well. So do you think that? So would you consider Vettel as one of the drivers of the decade, despite what has happened quite recently with his performances and stuff that he's now branded as a spin master or whatever, and a lot of new F1 fans don't have the respect for Vettel what he should deserve, because like I said, he did win 4 world championships. So do you think that he does deserve to be in contention for, let's say, driver of the decade?
Yeah, no, exactly. I mean, Sebastian Vettel, that's the thing with new fans, yeah, they don't realise what he actually did with Red Bull. It was absolutely incredible. He was an amazing driver, and obviously, as I said,
Yeah.
I was a Mark Webber fan. I was a fan of Sebastian Vettel, of course, because he drove for the team. A bit like how I'm a Max Verstappen fan now. If he does leave Red Bull, I'm not going to stay with Max. I'm going to be a Red Bull fan. I like Mark, and obviously I liked Seb for him being there, and of course I didn't follow him over to Ferrari. He was incredible for the team. He was a very, very strong driver. He was as good as Lewis Hamilton was. It's just the thing with those two is you can put it to bed straight away. Kind of the if any new fans are watching and they're thinking, oh yeah, I don't like Sebastian Vettel, Lewis Hamilton's much better. It depends when they're going to hit their their peak. You always talk about athletes, when their peak is going to come, and Sebastian's was when he was younger. There was a different side to Sebastian Vettel. There was a tale of two Sebastians, really. The team didn't give him everything he wanted. He again built the team. You also think about, Mercedes, they were new, but Red Bull were very new when Sebastian joined the team. He built the team, and again, Sebastian was an incredible driver then. You watched the races, and if you're a Red Bull fan or if you were a Seb fan, you loved it. And of course, if you weren't a Seb fan, if you were bored of him winning all the time, remember he got booed. It was Singapore 2012 set that all off. I remember Singapore 2012 was a race that Peter would just have watched, and they were like, right, I'm sick of Sebastian winning. And then he started getting boos, and 2013 actually was a bit of a weird year for him because he was so dominant, and that dominance led to people not liking him. And actually, if anything, Jordan, maybe he's still shaking off a lot of those dislikes at Red Bull, because I know that he was a very disliked driver, and more so than Lewis was ever I mean, I wouldn't say Lewis was ever hated for winning, for being dominant, but Sebastian in 2013 was almost hated for it because he was just dominant in the car. People were like, there's no challenge anymore. Well, if anything, it's their fault for not challenging him because he's just such a great driver. He's definitely one of the drivers of the decade for sure. Amazing with Red Bull.
Has to be.
The only thing though with him is 2014, and I think that was his worst year in Formula One for sure. 2016, you could say, and I think a lot of people do say that. I know you didn't like that, Jordan. 2016, obviously, a winless with Ferrari, but 2014 for me was a year where he came in and he wasn't just beaten by his teammate Daniel Ricciardo, who was brand new at the time. He was just a guy who just seemed to have... He had podiums. He could never get there. He could never finish. But he was a guy who was quite... If he never got first place, he would be quite gloomy, not very happy, quite resentful. He wouldn't like the team. He wouldn't give them the support that, for example, in 2013, he was, the Vettel finger was out. Thank you, boys. All this. I love you. 2014, it was like, I'm in a huff. You're not getting his first place, so I'm in a huff. And that wasn't very good of Seb. And then the opportunity came to go to Ferrari, and fair enough, everyone wants to go to Ferrari. Obviously, he was a massive Michael Schumacher fan when he was a kid, and of course he'd driven for Ferrari. Everyone wants to drive for Ferrari. They're the team, they're the team in Formula One that you all want to go to. So the opportunity came about. He went there, fair enough, but it just seemed like because of what had happened that year, he went there and he chucked his toys out the pram of Red Bull. He went, right, you know what? You've given me all this stuff. And I'm just, have it back. I don't want it. He left on kind of bad terms, Jordan. Not terrible, but not very good. And that's one of the things I think that it's really let him down. It's really let him down. And to me, that's really let me hit my perception of him down. 2015, and to be honest, all the years he's been at Ferrari, fair enough. He's been there, he's been challenging. Yes, he's had a few problems, but obviously they've maybe come with, pressure and things like that. Of course, Ferrari have never been as fast as a Mercedes in any year. 2017, they were strong. 2018, Sebastian, he did let himself down just a little bit because, of course, we all said that he had the lead going into, race like Germany, and of course he let that go by that stupid mistake. But still, it's not his fault. So Sebastian is Ferrari. I think has been fine. I think he's had a great career, and I really do. But Sebastian Red Bull was amazing, dominant, for sure the best driver of those eras. 2014 really let Sebastian down, and that was probably, I'm hoping that year he resents that a lot, because to me, I think that he really let himself down in 2014. Also, that kind of led to 2014 not being a very good year because, as well as Mercedes were on the dominant charge, and of course, as a second Aussie, Daniel Ricciardo was doing amazing results at Red Bull, 3 wins, and I always remember when he won in Hungary. So he won 3 races. Canada, he was ecstatic. Hungary, but Canada then was Belgium was the race where, to be honest, Red Bull, all the cards were the other way around. Red Bull had no chance of winning that race, and I remember Sebastian, he even struggled, but Daniel managed to battle through all of it and win, and that he was just so happy, and that's when you thought Red Bull are back, but for the other driver, not for Sebastian. It was a bit of a shame for Seb, to be honest, Jordan, and that let me down, and that's why I think 2014 wasn't a good year, because he let us down, and yes, it was a good year. Nico and Lewis had problems. Monaco were not friends. They did hit each other in Spa. Lewis got a puncher, and of course it led to a battle in Abu Dhabi, the final race, with double points. The first time a British and a German driver had ever battled since Michael Schumacher and Damon Hill back in 1994. So that was amazing. But Sebastian, to me, that was his worst season. It did let him down, and it wasn't a great end for an amazing driver, the best driver Red Bull have ever had. And I think for a very long time, Sebastian's going to hold on to that legacy of being the best Red Bull driver ever. But obviously, as I said, now the younger fans remember the Ferrari, and of course the problems that he's had. 2017, 2018 spinning, 2018 crashing out, losing his lead in Germany, and 2019 spinning in Bahrain, for example. So that's not great, but no, for sure, Sebastian definitely one of the drivers of the decade. But of course, that has to lead on to who is probably the driver of the decade, the man who's won every single year this year. And that, of course, is Lewis Hamilton. He was at McLaren in 2010, 2011, and his final year in 2012, and then went to Mercedes. He got 1 win, which was Hungary 2013, but then after that, just dominated, absolutely dominated. He won every single World Championship. bar 2016. So he won 2014, 2015, 2017, 18, and of course 2019. With Nico Rosberg winning the World Championship in 2016 for Mercedes, that means only 2 constructors have actually won this year. But Lewis, Jordan, he's won every single year. The lowest, of course, is one in 2013. He made the move to Mercedes, which everyone was like, why? And I even remember the quote was just, I like a challenge. I want a challenge. This is going to challenge me. Of course, obviously, that's when the friendship became between Lewis and obviously the late Niki Lauda became, because obviously he, as non-executive chairman of Mercedes, got Lewis Hamilton into the team, and of course started off this amazing run. So Lewis Hamilton, Jordan, British ambassador. We said in the awards show, we are so happy to have him on our side. From Britain, amazing sports personality, and of course he's going for 7 in all these records. But this decade, he's won every single year. He is. Would you put him higher than Sebastian? Lower? How would you sum up Lewis Hamilton's decade?
Oh, easily 10 out of 10, 7 world championships, whatever. Because for me, Hamilton is the driver of the decade by a country mile. Now, I don't want to be like, Hamilton fanboy and all that rubbish as well, because really, I'm not a Hamilton fan. I'm just like honoured to like that he is obviously from Great Britain, that he is from our background type of thing, and of course he is on the brink of breaking records. Like, we are witnessing history in the making. Like, when Schumacher was breaking these records, everyone who was living at the time going, right, okay, take it in, because we may never see anything like this again. Well, take it in, because we may never see anything like this again. Because how competitive F1 is being in the future, in the future to come. Like, we've got Lando Norris, George Russell, Albon, and obviously Leclerc and Verstappen coming through. They could all win championships in every single year. Like, one year could be one driver, then the next could be another. So we may never see a driver be so dominant in such a short space of time, and it's just incredible. This decade for Hamilton's been absolutely unreal. He scored points. He's won in every single, of course, decade. He's won in every single season since he did enter in Formula 1 back in 2007. The only driver to do that. He's the only driver to win in every single year in the decade, of course. And actually, he's the only driver to start every race in the decade. Now, all right, I know Sebastian Vettel has also been here since 2010, but 2016 Bahrain, he didn't start the race, did he? He entered the race, but he didn't start it. So yeah, so again, all these records as well for Hamilton. That's incredible on that sense. And Hamilton is just he's just another class in my opinion. Like, he's just such a clean, smooth, very quick driver. And the transition from from McLaren to Mercedes, it was almost a risk, but Hamilton knew what was going to happen. He knew what Mercedes had on the table for 2014, so it was like, let's just have a year to settle in for 13, and then let's have a go at it for 14. It might all fail, of course. Nobody knew how. I think Mercedes knew they were going to be good, but I don't think anyone knew how good Mercedes were going to actually be, how dominant they were. Yeah. In 2014 as well, for me, it was all right. It didn't produce the best of racing. Like, it had the V6s and of course the ugly noses. It wasn't glamorous in that sense, but it was the change of the guard in my opinion. Yeah. We had been with Red Bull and Vettel for so long, and to actually see someone else dominate for once, it was refreshing. It was new. I liked it. Hamilton Rosberg going for the title instead of Vettel and Vettel. It was just something completely different. And Vettel not doing very well as well. That was another thing that I was liking, because at the time I was a Vettel hater because he won all the time, and I was a complete noob about it. I was tremendous. I was really bad at that. And even I think I've got a Facebook status. It comes up every single year. I think it might have been India. I don't know which race it was. 2013. I'm pretty sure it was 2013 or 2012. And it said something like, can someone go to such and such country and shoot Vettel? Like, that's how extreme it was, in my opinion. That's how much I didn't like him, because he was winning. And yeah, but 2014 was a solid year. Yeah. Well, in some sense, but racing wise, it wasn't. But in 15 as well, for Hamilton as well, for 2015, it was just a clean sweep. It was just so easy for Hamilton. Like, Rosberg was there at the start of the year, but then he faded away because of reliability problems. Rosberg wasn't on his game in 15. And 15, I'll read it in a bit, but I posted out a tweet saying I ranked the seasons in
Yeah.
from from best to
Well,
worst, and I put
Jordan,
2015
actually,
at the very bottom.
what you could do is you could actually say that Lewis Hamilton's championships at Mercedes. So obviously, he's won 5 championships at Mercedes and 1 championship in McLaren
Yeah,
back in 2008. So you could kind of say that Vettel and Hamilton were very similar because obviously 2014 he had a massive battle till the very very end. It won in Abu Dhabi the final race. Vettel won in Abu Dhabi the final race in 2010. Lewis winning was a breath of fresh air. Sebastian winning was a breath of I can't say that, a breath of fresh air.
a breath of fresh
Because
air. Yeah,
obviously, and we'd had a few kind of mid-level championships. We'd had obviously Lewis winning in 08, Jensen in 09. The most dominating driver before that was Michael Schumacher and Fernando Alonso too as well. So Sebastian winning was amazing. Obviously, he became the youngest world champion. 2011 for Sebastian was dominant. 2015 for Lewis was dominant, as Jordan was saying. 2016, Lewis. I mean, yes, okay, he didn't get it, and Sebastian got it in 2012, but it was a battle that no one really expected. Of course, Rosberg, he came off, I think he had 5 consecutive wins at the start of 2016. It was so dominant by Lewis and Nico, massive battle. Obviously, Nico won out at the end, but that was very much the same as Sebastian with Fernando Alonso. And then, of course, 2017 was again a walk in the park for Lewis and a walk in the park for Sebastian. But
yeah.
of course, Lewis kept going. But I just want to quickly, before I pass over back to Jordan, I just want to quickly give you guys some stats from this decade. So, of course, there's only been 2 constructors to win the World Championship, Mercedes and Red Bull. So the stats, of course, from this year is Red Bull have won 4, 2010, 2011, 2012, and of course 2013, 4. And then obviously Mercedes are the rest, 5 for Lewis and 1 for Nico. Red Bull have had 56 wins in that time, when Mercedes have had 93. The biggest winning margin by Red Bull was 32 seconds, when Mercedes had a 37 seconds. Red Bull had 151 podiums to Mercedes' 194 podiums. Red Bull have scored 4,468 points, when Mercedes have scored 5,112 points. Red Bull have got 57 poles, when Mercedes, of course, are running away with it thanks to Hamilton on 103 poles. Red Bull have had 3,477 laps in the lead compared to Mercedes' 5,175. But this is where it gets tight, Jordan. Mercedes have won this by 1 point, and that is the Q3 appearances. Red Bull have 354 Q3 appearances to Mercedes' 355. But of course, Mercedes are 2 constructors' championships ahead of them. But I mean, what a battle we've seen between Red Bull and Mercedes. It's been absolutely incredible. I just wish, though, that Ferrari had got more of a challenge.
Yeah.
But nevertheless, it has been really enjoyable from what we have seen. So, of course, Jordan, we've talked about the drivers of the decade. Of course, just quickly mention, I didn't mention, but Lewis, of course, is my driver of the decade. Absolutely no challenge. But we're going to say who the kind of overrated drivers of this decade. The man who's kind of come into Formula One, and it's all been, he's going to achieve so much, and he's either left Formula One achieving nothing, or he is achieving nothing at the moment. I can't. To me, there has been quite a few kind of drivers who haven't achieved, but I wouldn't say that they were overrated or overhyped. But of course, the one that everyone's kind of saying at the moment is Nico Hulkenberg. Came in 2010, left in 2019 with nothing. Actually, sorry, correction, 1 pole position. So there we go.
Oh, yes,
so I mean,
true.
Jordan, overrated, overhyped driver. Let's just start with what's your opinion on Nico, and then I don't know. Do you have anyone else to say? Because my opinion on Nico is, yeah, he had so much potential, but every single year it's just come down really low. And yeah, I mean that's probably the only guy I could actually say. I mean, obviously there's been a few people that come and go in Formula One, but really he probably has let us down the most because he's been here all decade and it just nothing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, no, I think you could be right there, but I mean, like, yeah, everyone, when we asked you guys to kind of give your thoughts as to who the most overrated driver would be, I think a lot of you guys did say Nico Hulkenberg, and I think it's pretty much set in stone that Hulkenberg is probably one of the most overrated drivers in Formula One. But I don't want to say that in a bad way, because Hulkenberg, of course he's a good driver. He just never, whenever it came to that critical moment, it always went back. Obviously, it didn't go as bad for. It just went horribly wrong for Nico Hulkenberg. For example, he could have got on the podium this year in Germany 2019, the 2012 Brazilian Grand Prix. He could have won it. Crashed with Hamilton in his final race for McLaren, and even he turned around and said, "If I had won Brazil 2012, my career would have been a whole lot different." And he's probably right. He achieved so much in the lower ranks, and everyone was watching this guy thinking he's going to be the next big thing. And he pretty much stamped that authority by getting pole position in Brazil 2010 in a Williams. That was, it wasn't a bad car, but it wasn't anywhere near to what it used to be. And of course, beating Barrichello as well. Of course, that was good in itself in your first year in F1. But then he had that year out in 2011. And his Force India days were pretty impressive. But again, it delivered no podium. His teammate Perez in 14 got podiums. And of course, 15 and 16. Of course he did. Went to Renault as a fresh start, a manufacturer team, of course. And of course, that's what he wanted. That's where he wanted to be. And it didn't work to the way he wanted it to. And for me, I think Renault, in the Force India days, I think Hulkenberg let himself down, but I think in the Renault days, I think Renault let him down to a certain extent. I don't want to say like, all right, it's all Renault's fault. Of course, it's Hulkenberg. He's the one driving the car. But this year could have been that year that Hulkenberg eventually got his podium, because the car in 18 was pretty solid, and he beat Sainz. In 2018, he beat Carlos Sainz, which again someone else mentioned as well. Someone else mentioned that nobody ever seems to mention that Hulkenberg beat Sainz in 18. Bear in mind that everyone's ranting and raving about Carlos Sainz in 2019. Hulkenberg beat him in 18, which is a fair point. I think. I agree. Hulkenberg, I think, was probably looked upon in 2018. So again, I think everyone was just waiting on this podium for Nico Hulkenberg for it to come, and when it didn't, everyone was just like, oof. What's this guy doing in a way? Hulkenberg never achieved what he should have achieved in F1. Yeah. Some of it was down to the car, some of it was down to himself. So I would say he was overrated. Maybe overhyped, you could say. I think overhyped might be the best definition to put it. Because I think stamping overrated is a bit much. Unless probably I think Ocon could be overrated, perhaps. I think a lot of people have said Ocon. I was a fan of Ocon for a bit, and then I kind of went off him.
Yeah.
Ocon. Ocon. I think he's yet to properly deliver. I think Ocon could be. I think at this moment in time, I think Ocon you could put in that bracket, but not officially in that bracket of, let's say, overdriver or overdriver. Overhyped or whatever. Overrated. Sorry. I think he could have been like Hulkenberg, overhyped, but obviously Ocon has still got a long way to go yet. So let's see how that goes. But I think for me, Hulkenberg really it stands out. Some people did say Stoffel Van Dorn is like an overrated driver because he came into F1 and he didn't really deliver that much in F1. He left with nothing. Bear in mind, he had so much. But in terms of Van Dorn, I would put him in that bracket of underrated drivers because, I mean, look at the car he was driving. It was rubbish.
See, I have one, Jordan.
It was awful.
I have one that I don't really want to say now because obviously he commented on one of our tweets a few weeks ago. But there's a man who's been in Formula One for a very long time. I think he served the whole decade, and that's Romain Grosjean. And some parts of me think, especially when it gets to 2012, when Sebastian Vettel was first starting in Formula One, he was labelled the crash kid. Don't really know why. I mean, a few collisions obviously collided with Jensen in 2010 Spa, sorry. But Romain Grosjean, remember in 2012, he crashed quite a few times, and then of course the massive one where it resulted in him getting a race ban. Some of that is the last time it happened was some like back in the 60s, I think it was. That one of the guys, one of the people who I was just thinking, really, why is he continuously in Formula One? He moved to Haas, and I was like, amazing. First driver, of course. He's a pioneer. He's leading Haas. It's amazing. Kind of, in a few years, he's been, kind of the second driver at Haas. Also at Lotus Renault as well. I mean, yes, it was amazing having, him and Kimi in the team. But then it went him and Pasta. Yeah. And again, 2014, Roman and Pasta in that Renault. Like, really? What, like... I mean, I like Roman as a driver. But again, like I think it was him and Nico. The only difference between him and Nico is that he's obviously had podiums. Again, 2012 was a very weird year because obviously he was doing quite well. On the other side, he was crashing. But yeah, that's the only kind of only difference. I guess you could probably say Roman, but yeah, I'm gonna stick with Nico Hulkenberg. But again, as John said, not in a bad way. And like I said in the season review, is an athlete, winning Le Mans, a great driver. But yeah, just never found it in Formula One, unfortunately.
I think Roman Grosjean is, well, certainly in his Lotus days, in between 2012 and 2013, he was, I would say, pretty solid. All right, you had his incidents in 2012, but I thought he found his mojo again well, after that incident in Belgium, and then again in 2013, he was quite consistent. All right, he had his problems here and there, but on his day, he was a really, really good driver, and he got the podiums well deserved.
Oh yeah, he's been got some
Yeah,
good results.
the car was good, and of course Grosjean obviously put in their performances and actually delivered on the day when it really mattered. It's just recently that it hasn't really gone his way. Most of it is down to the car, but some of it is down to Grosjean himself. Of course, a couple of times, like for example, the spin in Spain in 2018. I remember that where he put the car in a false spin for some bizarre reason. The spin in the pit lane in Britain 2019. That's another one I mentioned as well. And of course, there's been a few times where he's just lost the car. I remember in was it Russia 2015? I think when he binned it in. When he was just on the left-hander, he just lost the rear and just into the barriers. That could have been down to the cold tyres. That could have been down to him losing, grip of the car or whatever. Yeah. I don't know. But like there are like some elements to like Grosjean that I wouldn't say he's overrated because nobody at the moment rates him or nobody rated him when he came into the sport. But I wouldn't say he was underrated, if you know what I mean, or in that way in any sense. So like there is that he's like borderline kind of, he's not brilliant, but he's not rubbish, if you know what I mean. But I think a lot of people were angry at the fact that he is still in Formula One and he's still making some silly choices, silly decisions that you should be thinking now, hang on a minute, Grosjean, you've been in the sport long enough now, you shouldn't be making these rookie mistakes. And I think that's that's transitioned on to Sebastian Vettel in a way, because he's making silly spins now all of a sudden, and you're thinking, really, Seb, you're a 4-time world champion, you've really well experienced in F1, and you're making these mistakes that the likes of Norris and Russell and everyone aren't doing. So what's going on there? So I think Grosjean, yeah, all right, bring him in, of course, bring him into the room. Come on, Grosjean, have a cuppa. But I think for me, Grosjean, I wouldn't put him in the overrated bracket because, like I said, nobody's really rated him. Yeah. But even so, I think Grosjean, like I said, on his day can be a good driver. It's just a shame that he is in the position that he is in now. But of course, he did retweet us. Sorry, he did reply to us that day.
Yes, that's the main thing. Yeah.
That was amazing. That was incredible. And of course, Dan, if you're watching this, of course, criticising Grosjean, I apologise, but I'm pretty sure that you would be expecting it from obviously us and probably some other people as well. But nevertheless, but obviously on the subject of overrated drivers, we talk about Hulkenberg. I think pretty much me and Lyle agree Hulkenberg might be at the top end of that. Underrated driver. Let's talk underrated driver. Now, I said before, Stoffel Van Dorn, because he did so well in the lower categories. He did brilliantly. Winning, I think he won like GP3 titles, GP2 titles, Super Formula titles. He was proper solid. I think 2015 was a strong year for him. I remember, or even 2016 as well. Of course, he drove in F1 in one race in 2016, the Bahrain Grand Prix, standing in for Fernando Alonso after that massive crash in Australia 2016, colliding with Esteban Gutierrez. Again, a driver who was he was nothing, a bland driver. Like he wasn't overrated or underrated. He was just pants. Esteban Gutierrez, I remember him. Obviously, Stoffel Van Dorn getting that one and only point in Bahrain, McLaren's first point of the season, in a much improved McLaren Honda that year. Got the full-time drive in 2017. The car was just shocking. Absolutely shocking. 2018, it was better with the Renault engine, but still, Alonso got the best out of the car, and Alonso whitewashed him. I think was it in qualifying or was it the race? He beat him in every single session. I'm pretty sure. I think it was qualifying. He beat him like 20-0 or something like that. So of course, it is going to be a struggle to try and match a driver like Alonso who is really, really quick, really, really, well experienced. But of course, Van Dorn never delivered to the hype what everyone had of him in the lower ranks. That's why everyone's saying he's overrated. But no, he's underrated because, like I said, the car was just utter. It was I was going to swear there. It was just rubbish. It was just like you said. Yeah, like, I can't stress that enough. And if that car had been better, if he was driving this year's car, 2019's car, I would like to say how well he would have done. Would he have done as well as Carlos Sainz? Possibly. I don't know. He might have done even better than Carlos. He might have not done as well as Carlos. But I think I would have liked to see him have a season in a better car. Of course, McLaren just kind of said, look, we want someone else in now. He's now in Formula E. I wish him all the best in Formula E. I will be following him in Formula E. So let's hope he can deliver to this hype and actually win championships in another category. But one driver I'm going to say was overrated. Now, I'm going to put Van Dorn there. But alongside him, tied in the same position in the most underrated driver category, he's a driver that he's a world champion. I never fully knew how good he was until he left the sport. I think you might know who I'm on about.
You're gonna say.
Yeah,
I know you're gonna
and
say.
a lot of people aren't fans of him now because of what he does on YouTube and stuff and what he says and that. But a lot of people are still, they quite like who he is. And all right, the disrespect, they criticised him when he left the sport because he didn't have another go at Hamilton, for having another go at the title and stuff. But of course, he had his family to deal with. He did what he had to do and he left on a high. Of course, I'm talking about Nico Rosberg. Now, this might be a completely utter rubbish underrated driver to talk about because people might be thinking, well, I rated Rosberg and I thought he was a good driver on his day. See, for me, I never looked Rosberg's side. I was always Hamilton's side, and I think a lot of attention was on Hamilton because of course who he is and the public figure he is, and of course the team kind of could say we're more on Hamilton's side, and maybe the team kind of favoured Hamilton in a way because like he had been there, well, part of the Mercedes family since he was 12, 13-year-old, and of course I know Rosberg has been at the team since 2010, but he was with Williams beforehand. And I remember in the Malaysian Grand Prix in 2013, when you had Multi 21, you had a similar sort of battle at the Mercedes in the Mercedes race, if you want to say that. And Hamilton got team priority over Rosberg when those two were battling hammer and tong during the race. Ross Brawn came on the radio and said, the gap is too far in front. The gap is too far behind and nothing to gain in front. So just hold position, which they did do so, but Rosberg wasn't happy with that, which I can imagine because you're like, hang on a minute, this is Hamilton's second race and he's getting priority already. This is a bit weird, isn't it? And like I said, like a lot of the attention was on Hamilton. So when Rosberg beat him, I was like, good job. That's a hard thing to do, to beat Hamilton. Only two guys have ever done that. Rosberg being one of them and Button being the other one in 2011. And even so, when he left the sport and Bottas came into the fold, I looked at how Bottas was doing and I'm like, hang on a minute. Bottas is like nowhere near what Hamilton's pace is. And then it dawned on us, and I was like, looking at Rosberg's performances, looking at Rosberg's qualifying performances, looking at like how close he was to Hamilton. And I'm going, he was pretty close. He was quite good. Like I said, I never rated Rosberg. And that alone for me is why I would put him in that underrated category, because no one, like I said, nobody really, as far as I was aware, no one really like rated him. Nobody really said he was a good driver. They just said that, oh, he got up and left, he couldn't fight Hamilton again. But obviously everyone was like, well, that is like the harsh world of Formula One. You are away from your family quite a lot. But everyone was on side when Bottas announced he was getting divorced from his wife. Everyone was on side with that. So that's like the harsh reality of Formula One. You're away from your family a lot. You're committed to the sport. And Rosberg was committed for a long time. He had his family, he had his wife, and he's like, I won the championship. Let's end it here. And I think, would I do the same thing if I was in his position? Absolutely, I would. So Lyle, underrated kind of driver. Who would you say, or a driver or drivers that would be in that underrated driver category for you?
Well, firstly, I mean, I absolutely loved Nico Rosberg. I absolutely loved him when he was in Formula One, but I wasn't raving about him. Of course, I'm not going to say
No.
that. But I thought he was amazing. Also, as well, I mean, he was the first guy to win for the modern day Mercedes. In 2012, China again
Yes,
added
that's true.
to the 7 winners in 7 different races. Worked really well with Michael Schumacher. Obviously, again, really good relationship with Lewis Hamilton. 2013 was a good year for him. Battled Lewis till the very end, and he could have won the World Championship in 2014. Yeah, again, he had 7 consecutive wins from going from the 2015 season to 2016. So basically 5 consecutive starts in 2016 and then 7 overall. So it was really good for Rosberg, really great, and yeah, I completely agree with you. It took him leaving Formula One to realise how much of an amazing driver he is, and I really like Rosberg, and I love him as a presenter. I know that you might some of you might disagree, think he's really quite annoying.
I think presenter wise, like I think it was in Abu Dhabi, he was just doing my head in at times. I'm like,
To me,
Rosberg, man, just shut up. He kept
do you
going
know why you
into
think that,
detail too much, and I'm like, Rosberg, I know, just let other people talk.
Do you know why you think that, Jordan? I'll tell you why you think that. I'll tell you why you think that. Because when Rosberg's talking, he gets really excited and really giddy and he talks really, really fast. And do you not realise what you're watching, guys? It's me. I'm Rosberg.
Yeah.
And that's why you don't like him, John. So yes, anyway, I wouldn't really put Nico Rosberg in there, but I know where you're coming from. Again, I might actually say that his successor, Valtteri Bottas, possibly he could put in there. I just keep thinking about Australia this year. How about that? That was meant as a, right, listen, Mercedes, everyone's on Hamilton's side, but listen to me and, favour me, because look at what I've just done after all that controversy from 2018, Valerie, it's James, all of the beating and the bullying that everyone puts on us. Hamilton's number one driver, Hamilton matters, Hamilton's the godchild, and everyone dislikes me as a person to replace Rosberg. But look at what I've done. I've won the Australian Grand Prix. I won in Azerbaijan. I made 6 consecutive Mercedes 1-2s. Look at what I have done, and I've got a solid second place. So again, you could say that he's an underrated driver, and maybe this year that's when it came to an end. Bottas being underrated, because again, remember at Williams did a perfect job. I think it was 1-2 in Austria qualifying 2014 or something like that. So good results there. For me though, it's a hard one. Danny Kvyat, I guess you could say then. He's liked and he's rated, but for me, he went to Red Bull. When he left Red Bull, when he got kicked out, that's when a lot of people turned heads saying, I don't like him, he's not a good driver, and left him kind of in the dark. But him coming back this year, I'm thinking he's showing everyone what's back. And again, he was a good driver at Toro Rosso. 1 season, and obviously he was up to Red Bull standards. But the one that comes to mind is Sergio Perez. Now, I mean, in terms of popularity, he might have a little bit more than Rosberg. When it goes on popularity, yes, people like Sergio Perez. Yes, people think he's a good driver, but not everyone does, and not everyone thinks he's a great driver. Again, like I said, some people think he's a good driver. Some people might think he's a midfield driver, but he's been around for so long. He's had such a good career. 2012 with Sauber. Incredible. Also, as well, obviously, his counterpart, Kamui Kobayashi, who, again, you could also put as an underrated driver. Kobayashi, really great. He got a podium at his home race in Suzuka. But Sergio Perez, incredible. I mean, remember, he could have taken the win on 2 occasions, and obviously Malaysia, he got incredibly close. After a 4-hour race, he span out at the penultimate corner, and that's what cost him the race against Fernando Alonso. 2013, then he goes to McLaren. And the thing is, Jordan, unfortunately, you won't like this, but your team, I'd say, let Sergio down. Very much like Danny Kvyat with Red Bull, because they kind of let him down a little bit. Yeah. McLaren let Sergio down. If it was a year later, so for example, if he had the K-Mag V6 car even, it would have gone better for Perez. But Perez had a terrible, terrible McLaren. Even worse so, that obviously they had an amazing 2012 and everyone looked at McLaren and thought, what a terrible team. Worst finish since 1984, they said. Even Jenson Button as well, his counterpart, wasn't very good. He couldn't fill the shoes of, again, he was brought in to fill the shoes of Lewis Hamilton. He couldn't do that, so there we go, he's out. Very much like Valerie Bottas, John, like you said. He can't fill a Nico Rosberg. He couldn't in 2017, so people didn't like him. Sergio couldn't fill Lewis Hamilton's boots, so people didn't like him. Then he has to go to Force India. Has good progressive years with Force India. Again, also alongside Nico Hülkenberg, who he might have been underrated, he might have been overrated, but he's definitely someone who wasn't looked at very favourably back then. Slugs it out. and just keeps going and going and going. And obviously, the Force India turns to Racing Point, and yes, the results are there. I mean, he gets a podium in Monaco. You know, he gets a few podiums here and there. He does well in places like Azerbaijan. Force India turns to Racing Point, and yes, this might have been a very strong season, one of his strongest seasons since 2012, 2013, 2015, even with Force India. But again, it's not there for Sergio, and because of that, people are thinking, right, he's been in for almost a decade now, 8, 9, 10 years. He's not going to go to a top team. Maybe it's died out on him. And I'm thinking, no, he's still there. He's still a strong driver. And if anything, if we take out the McLaren year, if that never happened, maybe he would be in a better position right now. Maybe that did affect him. But for sure, I think that Sergio is a very strong driver. And I think he deserves more credit than he deserves. I mean, again, like even when I've been doing research for videos and stuff, just little Sergio clips have been coming up to us. And that's when you click on them and you watch them and you read in them and you're like, he's actually a very good driver. He's beaten his teammates before. Obviously, he beat Kobayashi. He had a good challenge with Jensen. I think Jensen just came out on top on that year. Obviously, he's battled Nico. He's beaten him in a few years. He brought the challenge to Esteban. He had a few crashes with Esteban in 2017, which brought the spite again, which might have brought people to favour Ocon, because again, as John said, maybe very hot, highly rated Esteban Ocon, which obviously in that year 2017, 2018 didn't prove a penny. He did have a good start with Manor though. Obviously, hopefully now he can have a better year with Renault in 2020. But yeah, Sergio Perez, John, just no, for me, he deserves a lot more credit than he deserves. And maybe he'll get to a top team. Maybe he won't. Maybe his career will just be a middle of the road, end with Racing Point. Maybe a win or two, which obviously he's still chasing. Podiums and good points and things like that. Maybe that's where his career ends. But he definitely deserves a lot of credit. And he's not just a midfield kind of driver. I really like Sergio Perez, and I've developed more of an understanding and liking him for him as it goes on. So yeah, definitely Sergio Perez is my underrated driver. Also as well, Pascal Wehrlein, you could say, with Manor, a DTM world champion, kind of rushed. His decision to leave was rushed. Again, bad car with Manor. Marcus Ericsson, I wouldn't really say on result. That's more of me of a hunch. I thought he was a good driver with Sauber, but of course looked on that he was going to get replaced, and it wasn't amazing for him. But yeah, for me, definitely Sergio Perez, John. I think he deserves a lot, and obviously he's ex-McLaren as well. So I mean, would you agree with Sergio?
I would certainly put Sergio in that category. Absolutely, I think he was so quick in his Sauber days in 2012, and he had a really, really good, impressive debut in 2011. And a lot of people were already saying that this guy's going to Ferrari because he was part of their academy, and of course having the Sauber Ferrari link. Going to McLaren, it was don't get me wrong, it was always going to be a hot, big boots to fill, replacing Lewis Hamilton. Of course, there's going to be. I think it was strange that McLaren decided to go with Sergio Perez at the time. Maybe, I mean, of course, the car wasn't good, and I think that's what a lot of
people...
They
might have wanted to get him before Ferrari did, because obviously you've just said there, he was a Ferrari test driver, so maybe McLaren wanted to get him before he went to Ferrari, because of course that point they weren't sure what Felipe Massa was going to do, just keeping their options open. But I think that's why they wanted, and obviously the main thing, as I've just said, they wanted someone to replace Lewis, but obviously no one could replace Lewis, and obviously definitely not because of the Sergio. But just because of the car, though, I think as a driver, he might have had that chance, and if McLaren had a good car, then maybe Sergio could be in a great position, because at the end of the day, obviously, of course, the cars do make the people, but the people do make the cars. So, it was that was down to McLaren that year. If they give them a better car, because Jensen also struggled. I think that the main thing is, Jordan, is that if your teammate beats you in everything, if he excels and you don't, that's when you look and think they're a bad driver. But if you're both struggling in the team, that's when you look at each other and say it's the car's fault and the car's just not at standard. And Jensen and Sergio actually weren't really that badly matched, and it was just the car,
Perez.
And I would say worst year since 1984.
I think Perez had a better year than what people thought he did, because McLaren had such a strong 2012 in a way that the car was brilliant. It was unreliable, but it was still very, very quick, and it had their problems in 2012. But McLaren were still a top team, so therefore they were just like raising eyebrows, going like, why is McLaren so bad this year? What's going on? I'm absolutely sure that the very first day of 2013 testing that they were both quickest. They had a very quick car. McLaren had something on their car that was illegal, so did with their. I think McLaren did, Caterham did, Toro Rosso and Williams all had something on their car that was illegal. They took it off, and ever since then, McLaren were just woeful. They just slipped down the pack, and they were like a midfield team. Now, McLaren that year was a bad season, but nowadays you could class that as a good season. No podiums, all right, but still some decent results. And Perez,
Comparing it like the Honda days, it wasn't too bad.
I mean, exactly that. Exactly that. All right, it was, and of course, the Mercedes engine was in the back of that car. You know, there's many reasons why that car was so bad. But Perez, I thought on his day did match Button. He did beat Button in some races. But then again, Button is a more experienced driver, so therefore you probably expect Button to beat Perez. But I thought Perez could have lasted a bit longer. I don't know why he was there for another year, like just there for a year, and then same with K-Mag, he was there for a year. It was a bit strange for McLaren at the time. So I think Perez, for me, yeah, I'll definitely put him in that category. I hope that he.
Yeah.
I think for me that to move to a big team, I think that's gone in my opinion. But then again, with the future of Racing Point, like recently he signed a 3-year deal. Who signs 3-year deals and a midfield team in this day and age? It doesn't happen often anymore.
No.
So I
Not
think
at all.
Perez knows what's coming for the team because Lawrence Stroll is going to be heavily invested in this team. I mean, of course, the talk of Aston Martin coming in at some point in the future, new factory being built, more money, as I said, being pumped into the team. So Perez, I think he knows what's coming to the team, and therefore, if he can grasp it, I think Perez will be up there, as
He
a
could
strong
make it to
driver.
his team.
I hope he wins a race before the end of his career. I hope he does win a race. That would be brilliant to see. At the moment in time, it's a bit tricky, but I think that would be good to see Perez take a race win. And of course, he is one of the most likable characters on the grid. So yeah, and of course, let us know your opinion. Let us know your overrated and underrated drivers of the decade. But one last question to finish on, Lyle. One last thing to finish. So, of course, Formula One, it's based upon races. It makes, the races. It's the bread and butter of F1. It's it's like the whole shebang of it. Of course, it's the main event of the weekend. So, question is, race of the decade. What is it in your opinion?
Oh, right. See, again, I'm going to say a race that I watch. I mean, I did watch Canada 2011. I do remember that one. But for
I remember
me, Brazil 2012, again, watched all of that. See, it's hard. See, I'll tell you what, I'm going to say two, right? I'm going to say two races. And you'll
Alright,
get
okay.
why I do in a minute. So the reason I'm going to say two, I'm going to say the best race of the decade that I watched on the telly, and of course the best race that I went to, or in this case we went to. Best race, because I mean before I say it, obviously, like football, like any sport in the world, whoever says watching it on the telly is better than going to the live event is talking 1,000,000% rubbish. Because I mean, obviously, football, for example, is in one stadium. You're going to see all of the pitch unless you're like in Goodison Park or whatever, where it's got a restricted view. Formula One, of course, you'll only see one part of the track, but nothing will beat. I would rather be at one Formula One race and watch an entire season. So of course that is amazing. And the best race that we went to, of course, was Italy 2017 at Monza. But the best race that I watched on telly. See, the reason I'm going to say this one is because I watched it all the way through, non-interrupted, and again, as I say, it was part of the season where I watched all of Formula One and I was proper hooked into it. Was of course Brazil 2012, no doubt in my mind. But that being said, though, I could say a lot of races, I could say a lot of events in 2012 because it was just such an amazing year. I remember the China one again. I remember watching all of that. That was, I'll tell you what that was. That was on the day that I was leaving to go on Duke of Edinburgh. So I got up early-ish, it's like a 7 a.m. start, early-ish to watch the race. And as soon as Rosberg crossed the line and won, yeah! Because, first time Mercedes won one mid Formula 1, obviously I left to go out. Just a random thing. Again, Spain, as we were just talking about, Spain, loved that race, but obviously, of course, best race of the decade. Battle, fire and ice. I remember they collided at Red Bull and Ferrari. Fernando Alonso, Sebastian Vettel. Seb comes out, 3-time world champion. Of course, is Brazil 2012. But Jordan, I mean, as I just mentioned there quickly, Monza 2017. That was the race we went to, and I would say that was definitely definitely the best race that we'd went to. But of course, to answer your previous question, yes, the Brazil 2012, best race I've ever seen. And just because also, as I say, I mean, I was probably into Formula One at that point. I've got one last question for you as well, so I'm going to throw this back at you as well, obviously best race of the decade, but I also want to find out what year would you say was the best year for the cars? Obviously, because this year we've had V8 and V6. Sorry, this decade we've had V8
Oh,
and
is
V6.
this looks wise?
Yeah, let's go looks. Let's not just go dominance. Let's go looks. What
Right.
year? Looks and also kind of like the engine. Like what we were expecting. What would you say? So obviously best race of the decade as you asked me, but then also what would you say was the best year for the cars? Because obviously as we know, you've just said there 2014. Vacuum nose from the Ferrari, probably not. But yeah, what would you say is the best? And of course, the last 2 years we've had the Halo cockpit in Formula One. So what would you say was the best year for the cars as well? Obviously as your best race of the decade.
I think race of the decade for me would be Canada 2011. I know that's a very typical answer, like on the telly anyway. Typical answer but I just remember like being so excited because I never seen anything like this before whilst watching Formula One. It was just something new, something like, and at the time it was a school night, and I stayed up later. Again, another exciting thing that happened. To watch the race because it was on for so long. It was on for like 4 and a bit hours. It was just utter madness. Of course, Button's rise from the back to the front of the grid. The last like kind of heroic spin from Vettel through the chicane. It was just a brilliant race. Of course, Hamilton retiring, that wasn't a good thing because normally back in the day, if Hamilton retired from a race, I was never interested in what happened after that because I was a Hamilton fan. But no, I watched that race till the very end, and no, it was just incredible. I loved that race. I think Germany 2019 this year could be up there again. That I felt like an excitement field was there as well for that race. That was just brilliant. Austria, I thought this year was another good one. Brazil this year, and of course Silverstone because we were there.
Yes.
But in terms of races being there, absolutely, without a shadow of a doubt, attending races wise, is Italy 2017. I mean, of course, first race abroad for me and Lau, first time being abroad, me and Lau together. Of course, first race abroad, and it was just and it was the Italian Grand Prix. Seeing the Tifosi in real life, madness. The rain in qualifying, it was just crazy. And there was just all sorts of things that were just there, and of course, me and Lau love that weekend all together for loads of reasons, including the F1 debate show. It was just absolutely amazing. I would highly recommend go over and see our 2017 Italian Grand Prix vlog, where we vlogged Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. It was just absolutely incredible. Your other question, Lyle, about the car wise. I loved the 2010 car. One of my favourite looking cars. I know might sound a bit weird to some people, but for me, I love the look of this car. The McLaren MP4 25. I love the way obviously they've got the F duct. I remember loving that car when I first got into Formula One. Seeing the car in real life, and I just like the way the cars looked, and it's just a very nice. I don't know. I like that look about them. I don't know about you guys, but in my opinion, one of my favourite looking cars is definitely the McLaren MP4 25. The MP4 27 gets a big shout out in terms of looks. That's a gorgeous looking car. Absolutely love that car. But I think the cars that I absolutely loved looking at the most, well, some cars anyway, two in particular, was 2017's. The Ferrari SF70. Lovely car.
Yeah,
that is just gorgeous to look at.
Love 2017.
And the other one is I think it's the STR 12 or it was STR 11 12 Toro Rosso's 2017 car.
Yeah.
I think that might have been the 12. I'm not too sure about that one, but no, I remember seeing that car when it first got launched. It was a brand new livery because they were trying to break away from the typical Red Bull livery and go into their, I think it was the Cola brand, I think. So that's what that's what they changed into. Was it? I absolutely love that car. The look of it anyway. It's beautiful. Absolutely love it. Of course, the lower cars, the wider cars in 2017 was just brilliant. The Mercedes, it was all right. I like the Mercedes without the shark fin when they launched
I
that.
thought the shark fin was the best.
For the
I
launch
like
event.
the shark fin.
I like the shark fins. It's just I didn't like Red Bulls, McLarens because it was squared. I didn't like Mercedes's that they were squared, and of course Force Indias they were squared. But the likes of the Ferrari was curved. The Toro Rosso was curved. I don't know if anybody else was. Oh, the Saubers. The Saubers, that was curved. The dark blue gold livery, that was lovely. Absolutely love that. Hass's as well. I think Hass's was curved. Again, that was a lovely looking car as well. So 2017 was a certainly good year for good looking cars. And even in a way, at the time, I didn't like them. But now I look at them and I'm like, you know what? I really do like them. The 2012 step noses, the Mercedes step nose, the Red Bull step nose,
I like
the Ferrari. Red Bulls. The Ferraris, it's still a bit weird, but at the same time, it's like, yeah, that's a reminiscent look. Lotuses, I loved Lotus's car. The E, is it the E20, the E20, E21, I think. And the 2013 car with the little red thing at the top. I remember I watched that car being launched live on a live stream on my PC. I just caught it at the precise moment when they were releasing, when they took the covers off the car. It was just it was one of those moments. But no, I've had some really good looking cars this decade, of course, and really good liveries as well. And of course, let us know your opinions in the comment section below. Best race of the decade in your opinion, best looking cars, best liveries or whatever. Underrated driver, overrated driver, best driver of the decade. Leave them all in the comment section below. I know some people did mention them. Did mention them on Twitter. Of course, we're just asking loads of questions about the decade as well. Loving all the responses. I hope that we do get the similar sort of response on YouTube as well. So thank you so much as well. And of course, this brings us to the end of the show. Brings us to the end of the episode, and to the end of the decade. And another year is now over. Whew, wow, it's been a busy one, guys. It's been absolutely tremendous. So yeah, thank you so much for following us in 2019 as well. It's been an absolute honour, doing content for you guys as well, growing like the way we did, collaborating with some amazing people. We will be doing like a thank you kind of tweet, or like a links of tweets on, of course, New Year's Eve, which is today. So go and check that out as well on our Twitter at F1_day16. We're going to be taking a bit of a break now, of course, just to get away, just to relax a bit. We might be popping up in some videos, some random videos at some point in January and at some point in February. We will be back at the beginning of February. I don't know the exact date as of yet, but like I said, go and follow us on Twitter. Links below to our Twitter page to find out when we launch again. New logo, like I said, new graphics. I hope you do like them. Leave your opinions about them in the comment section below. But guys, enjoy the rest of your New Year's Eve. Don't try and get too drunk as well. See you all in 2020. But Lyle, do you want to leave? Do you want to say anything on that in your opinion, and like your end of year kind of speech? I'll let you talk.
No, I mean we said it all in the Christmas special. Thank you very much for everyone that's subscribed. We've had an incredible year this year, of course, gaining over 900 subscribers, getting over 1,000 as well. As John said, we did some collaborations with some amazing YouTubers. No, I think we said it all there. I mean, it means the world to us. We're just two lads that like watching cars go around in circles. And we hope that you can join us in 2020 as well. It's going to be a massive year. We're really, really excited to get back there. We wish tomorrow was winter testing in Spain. Just to get back there. But it makes you just wait and appreciate Formula 1 and the wait. What a great 10 years we've had, obviously. That marks, how long have we been on? About 3-ish years, because obviously we took a big gap in 2018. For the F1 Debate Show, obviously, if you've been there since the start, you deserve a massive congratulations. But yeah, it's been an incredible year. We've hoped that you guys have enjoyed as well all of our content, all of our vlogs, and everything that we've done this year. The last thing from me is just have a happy new year, and we'll see you all in 2020. Thank you very much for watching. It's been great.
Yeah. Thank you so much for watching. See you all in 2020, and for the final time, we'll see you later.
See you later, guys. Happy New Year.